comics, and we are beyond privileged to be publishing Conan with our good friends at Heroic Signatures. Exactly 50 years ago, in 1974, I snuck issue 1 of Savage Sword of Conan into my primary school, as you would say over here, my elementary school. My teacher found it in my desk approximately 2 hours later. I got sent to the principal's office. I got sent home with instructions to get a supreme bollocking from the man who received me at home, my grandfather, Pops, who bought it for me in the first place. And I still have that issue. Sadly, it is rather well thumbed and not particularly collectible, but I love it from the bottom of my heart. Crom is indifferent, but he's fictional, so we don't have to be indifferent. So I'm going to do some call and answers. This will go 3 times. I'm going to say Crom, then you are going to say Crom. But each time we do it, it's got to get louder. You with me? Yeah. Okay, here's one. Crom.
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 Yes! Come on! Conan time! Let me introduce you to this amazing panel. Firstly, the secret of the panel. Next to me right here, Conan the Barbarian. Next to him, the man who we are privileged to be fashioning the narrative of our fictional Hyborian world. My good friend, gentleman, grim Jim Zub, right there. One word to say, a few words to say, Jim. McDonald's at 4 a.m. Whiskey, stay at McDonald's, that's the way you do it.
You got a really good show.
And I use the term the man, the myth, the legend a lot. And sometimes it's hyperbole. I'll tell you when it isn't. When you're talking about Joe Jusko right there. All those great colours, for you to be working with us is a total privilege. Great, thank you for joining us. Thank you. Next to Joe, true story. 60 years ago, in northern Liverpool, there were 3 young men, more or less born on the same day. One of them was myself. One of them was legendary super letterer Richard Starkings. One of them was a young man called Daniel Craig. And I think you'll agree that one of those men is doing particularly well. And at some point, I'm sure the other 2 are going to catch up with me. Big round of applause for Richard Starkings. And then again, we have Robert E. Howard, historian supreme, the mighty Jeff Shanks. And a late-breaking surprise. We've got the mighty Jeff Shanks at the end there, right here. Okay, without further ado, I'm going to introduce our esteemed moderator, fellow pop culture expert, award-winning filmmaker, the one and only, the mighty Randall Lott. Give him a round of applause.
Every time there's a Conan panel and they make you say Crom, it's the closest you get to being in a cult without actually being there. It was such a treat. Maybe that's more about me than you. We all have the same experience. We all like at least some of the same things, and that's why we're here. And what's exciting about a con, this con in particular, is some of the people are in front of you right now, and we want to serve them as best possible. So I'm going to be a brutal taskmaster, not as brutal as Marcos, who is my direct boss in this brutality. But we're going to try to be very quick. But I'll just say this. I'm a documentary filmmaker, and I've been working on a documentary about Conan for 10 years. So I've met a lot of the people here, or talked to them, or the people who work on this, very beloved franchise. And to say franchise is not fair. What it is something that's right out of our dreams. When we're kids, we seek power, we seek sort of authority. We want to piss against the wind and punch people that we don't like and kiss people that we do like. And Conan We can say that, right? We agree? This is a safe space. Conan makes that happen in books, in paintings, in comics, in movies. We're going to make it happen here, but it's going to be fact. So get ready. We're going to talk, look at slides, talk about people, because I don't know if you've noticed the last while, Conan is back. Yes. Jim Zub has been channeling some very deep Texas arcana here for us, bringing the heat. I know you feel the same as most of us, and people who didn't know they love Conan, who've come on board the franchise and come on board Titans Comics. These are amazing, and it's been spectacular, and it's nice to see it crackling. There's all kinds of action happening. We have someone named Richard here. I think he played James Bond, is my understanding, if I know. And there may have been a nomination for an Eisner. Do you have anything to say about this? Is this true? Is it suppositional?
Yes, it's true.
So getting an Eisner, no big deal. Eisner wasn't really that much of a deal.
I've got one already.
What's this?
I've had one before.
There you go. Just add the acclaims. It's all good.
Take your flowers. Take your acclaim. Now, over the years, people have been involved in the franchise, and you are one of those people. What do you see in the development over time? How do you see this kind of curatorship over the character and the stories compared to what you've done in the past?
God, that's a big question. Yeah, I lettered 2 issues of the Marvel run, and that was in the 80s. I lettered pretty much all of Dark Horse run, which is about 15 years. And as everybody on this panel knows, Jim says I gave myself the job of lettering the Heroic Titan version because I already knew Rob de la Tour and had commissioned 2 pieces to cover recreations from him. And I was like, if he's drawing it, I want to letter it. And the great thing about this iteration is that it has the energy of the comics that I started reading in my teens. And Conan, was my gateway drug to comics. That was the first comic that I got really excited about. Issue 5 was of the Barry Smith run was reprinted in a black and white hardcover Marvel annual in 1975, and I was just smitten. And I collected Conan pretty much exclusively for many years. This is the kind of book that reminds me of those old issues, and I wanted to be a part of it.
And you had something to do with Doug Braithwaite being involved in the franchise.
I'm so glad Doug's working on this series. So I was a Marvel UK editor back in the 80s, and I worked on Thundercats and Action Force, which is the British G.I. Joe. And a young punk kid came and brought his portfolio in. He was 15 years old, and I was 25. I thought I was young. And he showed us his artwork, and I gave him a script that day. And here he is drawing the other arcs of Conan now.
Yeah, that's what.
So Doug Braithwaite at 15,
Fully formed.
drawing Conan. I mean, I could hardly look at Conan at 15.
He's only drawing Conan now. Earlier.
Sorry, his art.
He was drawing, I think his first published story was Thundercats.
Yeah.
But he came with the blessing of David, Lloyd, and Dave Gibbons. That's good enough for me.
No one's heard of Dave Gibbons. Moving on. So something else has happened over the past while. It's Savage Sword.
Oh yeah.
It's back! Now, Savage Sword, for some people, is their entree into Conan. For some of us, you went into a convenience store that had used books and stuff in the back. I mean, someone's nodding. I thought I saw you there that day. And you saw this beaten up Savage Sword, and it felt like the era. And so many, maybe the Ed Brubaker series he did, were trying to capture the feeling of those old Savage Swords. And you know that people like that 70s dirty, gritty feel. And to me, that is the feeling that we're getting. I mean, the images are indelible. The black and white is so muscular and it fits so nicely. What is it that made it work in the first place, maybe, is something that makes it right now. And we actually have an artist here who might have something to do with some of this muscular feel, a painter, Mr. Jusko. Are you channeling some of that feel? Are you just continuing?
Yeah, it's funny because the last I did most of, well, not most, a lot of the Savage Sword covers back in the 80s and 90s. My first cover was, I was 21, I think, when I did my first cover, and I was teaching myself how to paint on all of those covers back then. But somehow they seem to have an incredible following. And then I think my last cover was issue 200 in 1991. And the magazine failed, you know, it faltered, it went over to Dark Horse. And I hadn't done anything in years for Conan. So when Titan got the Conan license, they had contacted me about possibly doing some covers, and I just couldn't fit it into my schedule. But then I heard they were reviving Savage Sword, and I said to myself, there can't be a Savage Sword of Conan #1 without my cover on it. Yeah. So I can find time for you to do this. And I just wanted to come up with this nice iconic image for a #1 issue, and was really nervous about doing it because it had been so long since I'd done a Conan painting, and I knew that people were going to compare it to stuff I did earlier. And once I settled in, I think I got the feel back for what I felt he should look like, and it kind of all came together. I was really happy with this piece.
Quick little anecdote about that. We were at New York Comic Con, and I was doing a Conan signing,
Right.
and you and I were going to meet up because we were already underway working on this stuff, but we hadn't announced that you were doing the cover on the book. And you came down to Artist Alley because you're like, where are you? I thought you were going to come see me, and I was like, I'm too busy signing Conan. And so he comes walking up, and all of a sudden the line, there's this little hush goes through the line. We go, that's Joe Jusko, that's Joe Jusko. And so we're chatting really quickly off to one side. And then, so one of the guys yells out in the line, he goes, do a cover! And you look at me and you go, that'd be cool, wouldn't it? And then we just go back. It was just so funny.
Yeah, it was interesting because my original concept of it was going to be more of a cold Norse, you know, Hyborian type painting. And I spoke to Jim and I said, you know, are there any particular, do you want the characters to look like anything particular? And he had sent me like reference to the Stygian warriors.
Yeah, I was saying,
and I realized it changed
something in the desert.
Yeah, it changed the entire palette and feel of the painting, but I think it worked out really, really well. The thing that bothers people the most about that painting is the horse. My wife hates the horse. You know?
So what was funny too is, you know, Chris Butera, who's here as well, my editor on the series, he reached out to me. He said, you know, we got a challenge for you. Joe's going to be doing this cover. We would like for you to do a fiction story based on it. And I'm like, oh man. So the original, you know, Robert E. Howard Conan stories are short stories from Weird Tales. Like now you're really grabbing the lightning. Don't screw this one up. And so you and I chatted about potentially how it could work. And I get the final piece and I see this dead horse in the piece, and I'm just like, I have to incorporate a dead horse into the story now. And I'm really happy the way it all worked out. But it was so funny because my wife, she's reading this thing, giving me a first pass read on it, and when the horse dies, she's just like, oh.
Yeah.
I love it how Joe said, I think it worked out okay.
Yeah.
My wife was convinced I was something against horses, but because there's a Tarzan cover, I did recently there's a lion eating a horse, and the horse is screaming, and there's one of the front of the piece, there's a lion attacking a horse, and the horse is going down. She's like, what do you have against horses?
I know I'm not the only person here that wants to have a van with that on it. So, Joe, do you feel like it's, again, I am not an art critic, so I'm just saying, I see some of that beautiful pile of meat like a Frank Frazetta and that phallic strength.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you want to focus on him, and obviously that triangular formation is what makes that work. But I didn't realize when I was working on it that when I changed the palette, it does have a bit of a reminiscence of that Frazetta painting, which wasn't my intention originally, but the color palette sort of gives you that feel. But I mean, it's a classic formation, you know, from way back in the Renaissance days, you know, of how you can focus something on somebody and make it the standout image.
Is there a tonal vibe that you feel like this, is it retro to you, or is it, no, that's what it is? You know?
Well, it's the way I see the character. I guess my vision of the character hasn't changed much in the past, 30 years. But, hopefully I'm a slightly better painter than I was when I did the Savage Sword covers back in the 80s. So I think I have a better grasp of the medium than I did back then. So it's a more complete painting.
The most surreal thing for me was when we got our printed copies, and I crack open that box, I pull the top copy out, and it's like an incongruency because it's a time capsule, but my name's on it.
Yeah.
And that doesn't make any sense. I was just like, what is happening?
Yeah, you said time capsule, that's true. It almost gives you shivers. Anyone of a certain age, you see that and it really hits you. It's a nostalgia that I thought I was kind of immune to in a way.
Right, the format in particular.
Yeah.
Oversized newsprint, black and white,
Yeah.
like it takes you back.
Yeah.
In a really
That's why the minute I heard you guys were doing Savage Sword, I was
Yeah.
like,
Absolutely.
I was like, I'm available.
It would be so great if it was coming back next year, wouldn't it?
So, we were originally, when we did this panel a year ago, hopefully some of you remember that, we told you Savage Sword is coming out, black and white, oversized, beautiful. And we had 6 issues that we could deliver to see if the format was going to work, if retailers were going to respond, and if readers were going to respond. And I'm very, very proud to say, Savage Sword is continuing for you too. Thank you. You guys proved that there is love for the book in this format, that there is love for the format, and we are lined up another amazing year worth of phenomenal talent, including, I'm happy to say, our friend Jeff Shanks over there. Give it up for him. He's doing a King Conan story. Tell us a little bit about your work on that.
Well, I have to thank Jim first because I met you back at New York Comic Con
That's
last
right.
October, and I said, "Hey Jim, I'd love to draw some Conan again sometimes. Well, the editors are here. I'll send them to your table." And they actually walked over and said, "Yeah, we'd love you to do some Conan." And as I say, the clouds parted and the trumpets blared.
I'm wondering, who's this kid Roy Thomas? I don't.
Yeah.
So we're happy to say Roy is coming back, and he's going to be doing a story with Rob Delatore. So the absolute classic Roy Thomas. The reason why the Conan comics even exist, all the way from 1970, he's teaming up with our phenomenal, modern Conan artist Rob Delatore, and they are putting together one for the ages.
That's gonna be awesome.
So we're really bridging that old and new, and I think you guys are going to freak out the way we're freaking out.
Buscema vibes are happening right now. Everybody feels that,
That's
right?
It's Big John on overdrive. It's so wonderful.
And Jason Aaron, no slouch, loving the Conan.
And that's really been the goal, I think, is trying to take that nostalgia, that Bronze Age power that we all feel, but also giving it's a legacy, and we're all part of this incredible chain. So how many of those people can we incorporate, and how many can we bring together and celebrate this thing that we all love?
One thing I wanted to say with Jason is that the story I'm doing is 2 issues. I got an email in March. Jeff, I'd like you, we're thinking we really want you to do something. How about a 48-page Conan story? Oh, by the way, there were 2 of them. 96 pages. So I finished the first one. When we get home, I'm going to start on the second part. Talked to Jason yesterday, found out what's going on. It's Conan the King, and it's not what people expect, and I think it's going to be an iconic story that really, solidifies that era of his life. It's really remarkable.
And not a bad painting there either.
Yeah, and when I saw Joe's doing the cover for 5, I said, now people are going to buy the book. That's even better.
I look at that painting now and I realize it needs a horse.
What about the polar bear?
I mean, it really feels nice, and it feels, right? That's the difference.
That's what I've been hearing. So many people here at the show, you guys, the outpouring has been so phenomenal. And every time I hear it, it feels wonderful. So I don't want you to feel like I don't want to hear it. When someone comes up and they go, an old time collector, and they're like, I'm 14 again. You have no idea. I cracked this book open and I'm a kid and it's the best thing. And inevitably their significant other goes, it's their favorite. It's their favorite book every month. It's like super exciting. Retailers telling us that they've got people who are coming back to start a profile for the first time in a decade, sometimes 20 years, that they're buying up back issues of Savage Sword in the original. That's what this thing is. It's a legacy that we all get to be a part of.
And I think the tactility of it, the feel that we feel, that those of us who are gray hairs, I think a 14-year-old kid now can get that. That's
Absolutely.
accessible.
And we wanted to make something that is easy to jump into, but also rich and true to the power of this thing. 90 years in prose, over 50 years in comics. That's, you know, the character's older than Superman.
Yeah.
Right?
And could probably take him. Let's
You know, real quick, Andy, this is, for me, this is kind of what makes this so surreal, because I was that 14-year-old kid.
Right.
Reading these on the stands, or 12, 13, whatever. Savage Sword with Joe Jusko covers, and the Marvel comic with Jeff's art, and Richard, you did only 2 issues back then, but I read all the Dark Horse stuff, right? For me, I'm one of these old graybeard fans that you're encountering, except I'm actually getting to share a table of contents now with these guys. Well, you talk about an imposter syndrome feeling sometimes, but man, it's
so you are cutting yourself so short, right? So Jeff is an absolute scholar of this material, and just having him involved in the brainstorming process that we get on a call. First of all, we hype each other up with excitement all the time. Oh, you got to check this thing. I have a quick little anecdote. We're chatting about a bunch of story material, and Jeff's like, "Oh, I just got these packages. I got to crack them open. I hope you don't mind while I'm on the Zoom call." So he's got a little penknife out. He's cutting open a box, and he pulls out 2 weird tales that he got from heritage auctions. And he's just inspecting them while we're talking about upcoming Conan stuff. And there's like Queen of the Black Coast. I'm like,
No flex.
My God, that's the original Queen of the Black Coast. And he goes, "Yeah, it's in better condition than my other one. I'll replace it."
so yeah, I'm kind of
Those
a
are the
nerd, right?
people you're dealing with. That's
Wait a
all.
minute, maybe people wonder what you might be talking about, like what's coming. Why are you talking? Why are you
Well,
two
we're
guys in
always
discussion?
talking. So what we're talking about is the grand kind of tapestry of Robert E. Howard's work. The Blackstone is our kind of way of bringing together a ton of these narrative and thematic elements. I know nowadays these things about whatever multiverses and dimensions and timelines and characters crossing over seems almost old hat because we've been inundated with this pop culture stuff. Howard did it first. Howard's pulp stories have this wonderful, grand, interconnected quality, whether it's the Thurian age of Kull the Conqueror to the Hyborian age of Conan. But not just that. We're talking about, you know, a dozen other pulp stories, things like The Haunter of the Ring with Kieran and Conrad, where it's a story set in the 1930s investigating a murder mystery, and they find the Ring of Thoth-Amon in 1930, right? Like, or Kings of the Night, where Bran Morn summons the ghost of Kull to help him fight in a war. Like, this has always been there, bubbling under the surface.
Right, Howard was doing something that not a lot of people had done by the 1920s and 30s, and that was creating what we would today call a shared universe, right? That term didn't exist at the time, but you know, like Jim was saying, you know, he created. He had this idea, you know, there were a couple of people toyed around with this. There were a couple of writers that would mix their characters and stuff in different stories. But Howard, from the very beginning of his career, started creating this world and this timeline, you know, a fictional timeline. And as he would invent characters, he would plug them into it, whether it was Bran McMorn, right, the last king of the Picts during Roman times, or Kull during the Thurian age before the Cataclysm, Solomon Kane during, you know, Elizabethan, you know, Europe and Africa. And he would always drop little hints, Easter eggs here and there, you know, tying these stories together. And that was really unheard of, you know, at that time.
Dr. Shanks, is that a first? Did anyone else ever?
Yeah, a couple people, like Alexander Dumas, right? Three Musketeers, Count of Monte Cristo, would name drop a couple of his characters from a couple of other things. And actually, Howard was a big Dumas fan, right? So Burroughs started doing it, you know, a little bit. And in fact, Jim mentions King of the Night. That was the first time Howard did an explicit crossover where Kull travels through time 100,000 years to the time of Bran McMorn during the Roman Empire, and they team up together to fight the Romans, right? So full-on team up. It's interesting because Burroughs did the same kind of thing right at the same time with Tarzan at the Earth's Core.
Right.
And it literally within months of each other. And you know, I know that Howard was reading, and it's hard to tell if you know he was inspired by that or that kind of zeitgeist was just over there, and the pulp writers were just kind of doing this sort of thing. But literally within months of each other, they were both doing crossovers with their characters. Howard had actually done that earlier with a couple of characters that hadn't been published yet. Those stories didn't get published. El Barak is one of those. How many people have heard of El Barak? Right? A few of you. You're about to see a lot more of El Barak coming up in, and you can see him there. He's the one smiling in the center there with the Clark Gable kind of look to him, right? He's a sort of an Indiana Jones type adventurer. Howard created this character very, very early. It's one of the first characters he created when he was just a teenager. And he had another character, a Western gunslinger called Kid Allison that he created. And he wrote a bunch of stories individually with these characters, but then he also wrote some with them teaming together. And they didn't get published in the early, but this was the early 20s. So he was already doing this right at the beginning of his career, this idea of mixing characters, putting them together, creating what we've started calling today the Howardverse.
Yeah.
Because that's really what it was. He started, many of you may know, that he worked with, or he wrote letters with H.P. Lovecraft, and they bounced ideas off of each other. He would also throw in references to the Cthulhu mythos and stuff of Lovecraft, and Lovecraft would drop things like Crom and the Serpent Men in his stories. So he was even toying with, playing around with some of the other Weird Tales writers like Lovecraft and Clark Ashton Smith and these guys, and even like expanding beyond his own shared universe and creating even a larger Weird Tales kind of universe to some degree. It was amazing stuff.
And so for us, this idea is that this is already kind of in the mix. The kismet of it is already there. There's stuff happening, and there's all these little bits and pieces and evidence. What if we can weave that tapestry even more tightly? When Roy Thomas was writing Conan stories, and he would do adaptations of the original Conan stories in the comics, but he would also take another Robert E. Howard story, sort of file the serial numbers off, and turn it into a Hyborian Age story. And that was one way to sort of solve it, to give that feel of Howard and put it in the original comic. That's where you actually get things like Shadow of the Vulture with, Red Sonja Rogatino now becoming with the Red Sonja, the Hyrcanian warrior, and stuff like that. And so that's one way that, Roy solved the sort of problem. And in my original proposal, as we were putting this thing together, I said, what if all those stories happen in their original source, in their original time, but they reflect each other in fun ways, or we can put little fun mythic ingredients, or we can have symbols and concepts reflecting backward and forward to make these bonds stronger and be able to lift up characters that have not had the kind of spotlight that Conan has, and raise all ships with that tide. And
before you get your Sailor Steve Costigan fanboy hat on,
right?
I want you, that's a deep cut for Howard. I want you to tease, like how are you bringing this out in Black Stone? Because you want to be pre-ordering Black Stone to get your fingers in all this.
Battle of the Black Stone. Well, the good news is there are sort of 4 pillars to what we have coming out. And you've got the first one in your gift bag, so you're already off and running. Free Comic Book Day 2024 is the Battle of the Black Stone prequel issue. That's where we tee up everything. We told a bunch of cool stuff in Conan, 0 to 12, our first year, and I just want to brag, by the way, 12 issues, 12 months. Issue 13 came out Wednesday. That should not be worthy, in comics, but here we are. But we delivered the goods, and I think that consistency has really, really helped to bring the fan base back. You guys have something exciting every 4 weeks waiting for you. So the prequel issue sort of does a little bit of a recap and expands on some of the ideas of 0 to 12 from Conan, tease up which characters are being being lured into this horrific kind of internal war that is happening. And these characters are each in their own times, and they are seeing this sigil, this sign, this stone has this mythic quality. There's an original Howard horror story called The Black Stone, and it is really famous and awesome. It definitely has that Cthulhian mythos, that eldritch kind of feel, and we're taking that as this mystic MacGuffin that has been sprinkled in multiple Howard stories, and using that to really drive forward this powerful narrative, which is with the group of characters that you saw in that previous image. Then, we've got the Battle of the Black Stone miniseries that's going to be coming out this fall, September, October, November, December. And they've given me this amazing tapestry to tell this story. These heroes of man, as we sort of call them, being brought together thanks to this character that I created for the new series called Brissa. I call her our cosmic scout, and she's this really important linchpin to some of the mythic structure that we're putting together. We've also got a special issue of Savage Sword. So Savage Sword number 4 is our Black Stone issue. 6 short stories, each of the main cast that's going to be in the Black Stone miniseries, getting their own spotlight in that particular issue. A whole different raft of creators that I'm so proud to have kind of brought together wound them all up with exciting possibilities and let them go free, including Jeff Shanks' first comic writing credit. I'm happy to say. Jeff, like I said, is such a kind of collaborator, and he's so passionate about this stuff, and he knows narrative, and he knows prose, and he knows all the whole structures and everything else. And so we were talking particularly about these two characters, Kieran and Conrad. We're almost like these eldritch investigators.
They're kind of a cult. It's a cult detective genre, but they're kind of a cult archaeologist.
Exactly.
And so for me, that's actually my day job. I'm an archaeologist, so I figured, okay, maybe this won't be too much of a stretch to do Conrad. It's basically Lovecraft meets Indiana Jones, right?
Well, what I was saying to him, we were brainstorming what all the stories, what's the one little plot point we need to have payoff in these short stories, and then I can let the writers come up with the rest themselves, what they like about the character. And you were just like going to town, and I go, well, so funny now, why don't you just take that cool nugget and you just write it yourself? And you were like, what? I was like, yeah, let's do it, man, it's gonna be super fun. And so that Blackstone issue is gonna be super fun. We've got this great, like I said, spread of writers and artists who are all coming together. Some of my dear friends and some of the people whose work I just absolutely love. You guys are gonna have a blast with it. And then on the end there, Titan, our partners have been so excited and so pumped for what we have coming that they approached me and they said, we want our fiction program, we want our prose program to reflect Blackstone as well. So we've got a brand new novel coming from James Lovegrove, and it's not an adaptation of the Blackstone. It's also supplemental and adding a really cool wheel to it. You could just read it as a very cool Conan novel and you're gonna greatly enjoy it, but if you're seeing the whole thing, you're gonna get even more out of it. It just feeds out this incredible, big, broad, explosive kind of pulpy story. And Lovegrove and I got on multiple conference calls and we were chatting back and forth, and I kind of laid out to him this grandiose long-term plan for Conan Publishing. And it's scary because I'm saying it all out loud. It's like giving the big, kind of secrets and hoping that people see what I can see and what's possible. And his eyes were just getting bigger and bigger, and he's just like, well, I gotta be a part of this thing. And I'm just like, right? That seems to be every one of these meetings that we have as we're talking about the future and the possibilities. We're all just so damn excited, and we're all just so happy that you guys are along the ride with us. So those are the four pillars of the Blackstone, and we can't wait for you to read them all.
I'm going to segue off something he said. People are excited about Conan, but in many different forms of media.
Yes.
So if you want your Conan and you want to read it and you want to see paintings, you can do that. If you want to do other stuff, reading digitally, I'm not the only iPad reader in here, I'm sure. I don't want to mess up my books, so I read ebooks, and those are provided to us. I know that's kind of a
if you guys haven't read the ebook program, so they're releasing new short stories every single month through the Heroic Signatures ebook program. A lot of authors who have been just dying to dig in and do their own kind of pulp stories in that Weird Tales format, the short story format. And those have been coming out to great acclaim and real excitement. And getting that little hit on your Kindle, it's wonderful to see. I love this stuff. It feels like it's always coming back.
And then a big fat omnibus action for people like me who don't want to open them up necessarily and mangle them, but you want to see them, and then they're heavy, and you can use them to make yourself feel good about your choices in your life. That's how I use them. Look, another one, honey.
On the video room from obviously Conan Exiles is still going strong. If you go on YouTube and you search for Conan the Barbarian, there's probably more Exiles and Age of Conan videos than anything else. Yeah. More than the movies, more than the books. The video game audience, that modern younger audience, they love that damn game and they go crazy talking about builds and funky things that they're doing with it. Deep in my heart is tabletop role-playing games. I think everyone knows that. I was raised by dragons, like Dungeons & Dragons made me want to be a writer. The new Conan role-playing game, if you guys don't know about it, Monolith, who made the phenomenal Conan board game, has a brand new RPG. They're going to be kickstarting the expansive version of it this fall. But right now, you can go to their website and get the quick start for free. So you can try out the rules, you can do a sample adventure. It is wonderful, and we've been talking at length with them.
We had a pretty special experience.
We were at Howard Days this year, so we did the Robert E. Howard Book Festival in Cross Plains. And one night I ran the quick start for Jeff and for Hawking, the author
John C. Hawking,
City of the Dead, and
Howard Andrew Jones. top
Yeah.
sword and sorcery writer, and Mark Finn, great Howard biographer.
And we were literally at the Lord House, and I was running the Conan Quickstarter. It was the craziest thing.
How
Howard
did you
took
not
that.
conjure an old god? How did that not happen?
It was amazing. It was such a fun ride. And realizing that we've just got so much excitement going on right now, it feels really electric. It's so cool.
What's that on the bottom right? Those look like turns, toy turns, character turns, figure turns. There's got to be figures coming up too.
Yeah, we're working on a new set of action figures. Working with the same people that made all the great Frazetta-based action figures, and you can see there's a concept of that one that will be based on Rob Delatore's Blackstone cover.
Yes.
As we know, you guys have been absolutely loving everything Rob, so we wanted to celebrate that with his own commemorative figure. And then we're also going to be pumping out a lot more Conan merch in the next year. Get you guys all those fun Conan t-shirts and posters of all the awesome covers that people like Joe has been knocking out. And then of course,
Everybody on the creative team gets a box of those, right?
oh yeah.
He said,
Look at our budget now. Jeez.
And that merch will start hitting in October previews.
that's right.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
look what's right in the middle.
Yeah,
Give it
I just saw that.
sweet fatalities.
That's right.
Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, I saw that trailer the other day. This is one of the things that pleases me so much. Anything Conan related, my social media just gets swamped with it. Just absolutely swamped. Some random cosplayer, someone sending it to me, some t-shirt, some bit of viral media, some meme, like you name it, it comes in my inbox. I love it because it like that I'm associated so closely that you think that I need you to tell me every time. I don't consider it an insult at all. It's really pleasing. So Mortal Kombat has just been like shellacking my Facebook for the last 2 days.
I can't wait to see the Conan fatality.
That's right. Oh, Conan Fatality's gonna be amazing.
I'm in all those emails where they send them in for approval, and the Mortal Kombat guys, they know what they're doing. And so I can tell you those fatalities and animalities they brought back to you are going to be very fun and very fun.
Sweet.
I can't be the only one who, we never see Conan cosplay anymore. You notice I don't see it very often. Is it because we're all too old?
It's because Joe's the only one that's big.
Joe. Maybe get some fur diaper out there. I might start that. My 60th. There's a place you can go right now to see some Conan action. You nip down to the Titan booth. That is, I just want to make sure it's 5537. So it's near. Please.
So you may have heard me say this before if you've been anywhere on the panels. The Titan booth is in a very strange place. So the number is 5537. You can pretty much ignore that number because if you go to row 5500, you won't find our booth. The way that it works is we've got a wall booth. We're against the wall, and so the numbers are anomalous. So what you need to do to get to the Titan booth is to go to door C, entrance door C of the exhibition hall, and we are immediately on the left. Yeah, you can't miss us because we've got a big floor-to-ceiling banner. So entrance door C on the left, that is where the Titan booth is. Thank you, brother. Thank you. Yeah.
And at the Titan booth, by the way, here's the way I found it. I'm walking past, not looking at the wall. There's the diamond, the big blue diamond. And then I turn left, and there's all the good stuff. Included in that good stuff, there is a Rob Delatoore pin. There is Savage Sword of Conan 1 SDCC foil by this little young artist, Joe Jusko. Conan the Barbarian 13 SDCC foil Dan Panosian. Some little guy Dan Panosian. I don't even know his
Versions here at the show. He and I are side by side at GG18 and GG19 in Artist Alley.
There you go. Go see him there. Conan 13 SDCC Tahani Far Virgin and Tahani Far. Right, you can be here right now. No?
And Tahani signed all the copies.
Signed copies. So there is something happening down there 1 to 2 today, but there's also other stuff there right now. 5537, tricky. Door C up against the wall, not tricky. And very soon here, we want to get to some Q&A. We want to have time for that, so we're going to do a giveaway right now. I have in my grasp a bunch of tickets. I am going to pull one of these tickets. And if you are the holder of these tickets, you have to arm wrestle me to take this stuff. And I'm way stronger than I look. I look like a frail Canadian filmmaker. So the numbers that I have are 0. Yes. Here it is, winner. 0, 0. Full. Look at this in a different voice. And now, 0, 0, 4, 0, 8, 8. You are the not here.
No, they gotta be.
You are here. See you in the back. See you in the back as your best friend. I know it's going to be him.
I hope you had room in your luggage, sir.
So knew it was going to be him. He was looking at me, giving me like power.
He's like, check will clear later.
At this point, we can do a Q&A. If you would like to ask any questions, we have about 10 minutes left. And if you have a question, if you don't, I'll ask mine. And they're all self-serving, so you had better ask a question. Please just, there you go. Here's the question.
I know a lot of you were in Texas at Robert E. Howard's place.
Yeah.
What kind of planning, since you were all together, were taking place for some of the stuff we saw today,
Sure.
or what's coming maybe in the next year?
You were asking about Howard Days, which is the Robert E. Howard Festival. It happened last month in Cross Plains, Texas. Just to give you some context, flew into Dallas, rented a car, drove 3 hours. The last hour is almost all dirt roads, and you're in this town of less than 1,000 people, where the Howard House is. It's an American heritage home, and it's a museum to Robert E. Howard. And we were there for 3 days. We did 1 day of sort of filming around the grounds. A lot of that footage is going to be coming out on the official Conan YouTube channel. If you're not subscribed to it, Sean Curley's your boy there.
There he is.
Amazing stuff. We filmed so much cool material that's going to be on the channel over the next year. But getting us all together was so wonderfully electric. Like, Jeff and I have been talking for over a year over Zoom and stuff, but we've never met in person. He's taller than I thought, and it was phenomenal to just hang out, to just have this casual. We had a morning before Sean came to do some filming. We were literally sitting on the porch of the Howard home, casually talking about the future and the past and how exciting things are and how fortunate we all feel. Sorry, like to be able to do this. You know, this is our job. And Jeff goes, "Oh yeah, that's right. You've never been here before. This old hat for me. I do
Right.
over a year."
I've been doing it for like 15 years.
Right, this is more like a family reunion for me. And I'm like, well, and he goes, "And you're part of the family now, buddy." And it was just so warm and so sweet. And I go, "Yeah, except I'm the weird, black sheep cousin no one knew about, and I have a plot of land now right next to the house."
Well, you know what? This is the craziest thing. My team went, and I was a high school teacher, and I had to teach.
Oh, that's right.
And I missed it. But I went to Rusty Burke's house, and I touched Rusty live. If anyone here knows Rusty Burke and Robert E. Howard, I went to Rusty's, and that was my pilgrimage, and I got the power from Rusty.
I think the craziest part was Sean and I were doing an interview at one point, and he's like, "Oh, just sit at the table."
Right,
the
right.
Howard's writing
desk.
table,
Right.
on his writing desk, and I'm sitting there, and I'm talking about the creation of Conan, and he says, "Can you motion over to the table as you're talking?" I go, when Robert E. Howard made Conan the Barbarian, like I'm sitting in this space, and it feels very, it's phenomenal. It's a phenomenal feeling. It's such a phenomenal community. They were so welcoming. They were so warm and so excited about the past and the future, and that's what it's really all about for me, honestly.
Yeah. It's really a pilgrimage. It's hard to get to, like Jim said. You got to really want to get there. And so everybody that's there, it's true hardcore fans that have made that pilgrimage, to this place. And you all, it's people that that you've got this shared, thing that you all love so much. And so it is instantly like family, right?
And so it was so easy to slip into the mode and to talk about what's coming and get excited and to know that we are in that space and that we're feeling it and channeling it as much as humanly possible. And it can't just be retreading. I think that's one of those things that when I was talking to Fred and Jay, the owners at Heroic Signature, I said, I love the adaptations, I love the existing stories, they're absolute classics. But if all we do is do them over and over again, there's no surprises there. There's no, you got that electrical feel when you were a kid because you didn't know what was coming next month. And I said we have to keep that vibrancy to the narrative, otherwise we're doing wrong by it. We can't just be, a cover band, right? Replaying the hits. So.
Jim, it occurs to me that if you go to a Frazetta museum and touch his paints, and that you will have channeled sort of a complete circle, and you will conjure an old god.
They've got a new series of Frazetta books that are coming out, and they reached out to me to write one of the entries all about the influence of Frazetta on the medium. What? Like this whole thing is the most insane. Someone asked me the other day, they said, man, this must be a bucket list for you. And I said, no. And they said, what do you mean no? I said, when I was a kid, I wanted to meet the people that worked on Conan the Barbarian. I could not be those people. That is impossible. This little kid from Oshawa, Ontario, does not get to do that. That's not how this works. So we're galactically beyond the bucket at this point. The bucket is a tiny little step off in the distance. And I am so, so, so thankful to all of you for making my dreams come true. So,
for those that don't know, well, wait till I say the next thing. For people that don't know, Jim is from a town that is often called the Dirty Schwab.
We're the city that motivates Canada. It's a car factory.
Deep Canada lore.
Oh, yeah. But we had 3 comic stores when I was a kid,
Yeah.
so we had a lot of escapism going on for sure.
They got Star Wars in 1987. So important. Is there anyone else with a question here? Yes?
Do you have a favorite story?
Oh boy.
What's your favorite Howard story?
The favorite Howard story.
I know the answer.
You know the answer?
I think so.
Probably.
Because the companion.
It's very tough, right? But I'm going to throw this one out there. It's actually not a Conan story, although there are some Conan stories that are right up there, like Beyond the Black River, Red Nails, Blue Black Circle. My favorite Robert E. Howard story is Worms of the Earth,
I was just about to say,
which is it's a Bran McMorn story, right? And the reason I say that is because, and I highly recommend anyone, if you haven't read it, check it out. It's online. It's a story about Bran McMorn. It's a horror story. It's sword and sorcery. It encapsulates a lot of Howard's themes, like the barbarism versus civilization theme, right? The Picts fighting against the Romans. That concept. It's got Lovecraftian themes in it as well. It has a Black Stone, reference in it too, right? It's so many of the elements and tropes and themes that resonated with Howard and that spoke to him and that were so powerful in his works. They're all there in this story. They come together, magnificently. So yeah, Worms of the Earth.
So what's interesting is quite a few people ask me why we haven't done anything with Bran McMorn yet, and it's like we've got a long-term plan, and I need to keep some cards held to the chest.
I got some ideas.
I got a lot. So it's just a matter of it's not if, it's when. What's my favorite Robert E. Howard story? Oh, that's a really hard question. I'm rereading so much of it right now, and so I'm being pulled into these fascinating whirlpools of, oh no, this one's it. And then I'm reading another one, I go, oh my God, this one's so crazy good. I've always been really partial to Red Nails, and I do, it's phenomenal. And again, people are like, I'm surprised you haven't mentioned Valeria, and it's like, I gotta hold some juice, we gotta keep some levers that I can pull for later. Bran is definitely one of those, and Valeria is another one that I'm keeping close to my chest until the right time. But that being said, I think what's surprising me now is in Savage Sword number 3, I did a war poem, which is the stupidest, craziest challenge that I've been given so far. You wouldn't think it would be, but it's hard. It's really hard. That lyricism, that voice that he has, the way he's able to summon words that create imagery in your mind. And so I was rereading a lot of Howard poetry, and those really shocked me how really, really good they are. There's a poetry reading at Howard Days. We're on the porch, and people are reading these poems in this gravitas and yelling to the sky. And it would be so easy to be cringy about it and to be like, oh, this is embarrassing. These people are reading these war poems. But we're all just into it. Everyone's just doing it.
And dressed as Picts.
No. But, and so, the gang was all there, and Bill Cavalier goes, hey, I heard you had a poem. I want you to read it. I was like, no, I couldn't. This is for Howard. And he goes, I better read your new poem. So I read mine, And I was waiting for everyone to just be like, ugh, you know, and I read it out, and then everyone clapped, and I thought, okay, that wasn't so bad. Okay, that wasn't so bad. Okay, we got this. It's all good. So it's funny. I'm off in the weeds with this stuff in the best way possible. People are like, what are you reading lately? I'm like, well, it's a lot of Howard. It's a great thing, but it's like constant. My reading list is just, every time I have a call with Jeff, he's like, oh yeah, you gotta, the Screaming Skull of Silence, put that on your reading list. I'm like, okay,
I'm an instigator.
You know, it's kind of wild right now.
One thing you'll know is for people who kind of hardcore flex, like old school fans who are like, you don't understand the franchise like I do. These guys understand the franchise.
Jeff has been amazing in that kind of way, where I'm sort of, I go, I think this kind of I'm seeing this kind of an echo. Does that work? And then Jeff's answer, he is like the ultimate improv guy. It's the yes and. He's like, not only does that, but here's 10 other things. Check this it out, and then put it in there. And when I thread some of these in there, he makes me look so good, And it's my job to try and make it all feel cohesive and emotional and intense. But he has been just a phenomenal resource. But the team as well, like Heroic is 100% behind us, and Titan is 100% behind us. And it's not about, I've worked on a lot of commercial properties, and fear drives a lot of decision making when it comes to making stuff. And these guys are about excitement. And I think that's been one of the most cool things about being in the mix with my friends making this stuff, because we've all become friends over the course of the year. I brought one of my friends to the Heroic get-together the other night, and afterwards, he does the old punch in the shoulder, I'm really proud of you, buddy. That might have been a lot of drinks, but he was very proud of me. And then he said, that didn't feel like a corporate thing, that felt like a family thing. And I was like, it's a family thing.
I'm going to jump in and say that we have to quit, but in my ending remarks, I'll thank everybody for coming, thank everybody for coming.